Our planet generates an incredible amount of extraordinary phenomena. Some we take for granted, even if they are a little difficult to predict. Others occur to us as nothing short of miraculous. Often, these are events in places seldom seen by people. They are rare, mysterious, and many seem outright impossible. This series encapsulates the remarkable with the exceptional. Is seeing really believing? With the help of leading scientists, fact will be separated from fiction. Join us as we set out to discover the secrets of Australia's impossibly pink Lake Hillier, unravel the formation of Iceland's Glacier Lagoon and Diamond Beach, and walk amongst China's stone forest. It is a journey taken with eyes wide open. Welcome to Impossible Planet. There are few lakes in the world that are as conspicuous and unique as this one. This is Lake Hillier, a body of water 10 times saltier than the ocean. A lake exceptional for its stunning hue of pink. Is it possible that anything on this planet could be rendered this color naturally? What can explain the extraordinary blushing color of this otherworldly lake? With its incandescent color, Lake Hillier has captivated and baffled those who have come across it.
It's a bit confusing to the senses, but absolutely breathtaking. It's the colour of the lake that seems impossible. How can this body of water be bright pink?
Off the southern coast of Australia lies a series of small islands spanning over 140 miles. The largest of these is Middle Island, situated 80 nautical miles from the mainland. It is home to Lake Hillier, a place so striking, so unusual, it looks as though it's from another planet.
It's extremely unique and something that very few people have been able to experience, really. Like nothing else in the world.
Surrounded by the unforgiving Great Southern Ocean, as well as great white sharks and shipwrecks, Middle Island is rarely visited. Its unique geographical location makes it the ideal place for holding secrets. For a long time, Lake Hillier was one of them, until 2016, when the lake's mysterious color was finally accounted for. For centuries, Middle Island has been a magnet for adventure and mystery. It's believed to be home to Australia's oldest gravestone. It hosted the renowned navigator Matthew Flinders, who led the first circumnavigation of the continent. But perhaps its most notorious resident was an American pirate known as Blackjack Anderson.
Middle Island has the notorious distinction of having the only pirate on the Australian mainland that operated around here back in the 1830s. He was an Afro-American by the name of Blackjack Anderson.
He basically ruled these waters with like an iron fist all those years ago.
Blackjack relished the harsh and rugged environment, using it as the perfect base from which to plunder his way along the coast. A recent bushfire uncovered numerous structural remains built by Jack. Before he met his demise on the island at the hands of his crew. The first people to come across Middle Island's Pink Lake were the ancestors of Doc Reynolds. As well as being a senior traditional owner, Doc Reynolds is an Aboriginal custodian of the area.
We're the most eastern of the 14 tribes of the Noongar Nation, and the Widari mob, and my mum's mob, which is the Nookari mob. We're basically the mob that lived around the Middle Island.
The presence of Aboriginal people on the island can be traced back thousands of years, way back to the time of the last ice age, before sea levels rose to create these islands and separate them from the mainland.
Middle Island is what we call Gullich, which is just general generic term for island. We know that there's been Aboriginal occupation on the islands, but we believe that happened before the water levels rose, and some of that dates back between 12 to 15 to 20,000 years.
Doc Reynolds has led a team of marine archaeologists to Middle Island, where the discoveries included a number of rare Aboriginal tools, helping to establish the presence of Aboriginal Australians here over thousands of years.
We found a huge amount of Aboriginal artefact on the island, which showcases evidence that Aboriginal people did live there.
When Doc explored Middle Island for himself, he came across landforms that his ancestors would have found generations before him.
There's a magnificent big nama holes on the island, and also big freshwater hills of water on the islands. And the most significant feature on the island, of course, is Lake Hillier, which is a bright pink lake, and it's quite unique.
Although the origin of the lake's color has been a mystery to science for decades, Doc's people have their own explanation, dating back to a period they call the Dream Time.
Our story that we have on the mainland regarding our Pink Lake turns around to depict the killing of a Noran. The Noran is, to us, is the rainbow serpent or the snake. And of course, the men actually killed him on this nice big white lake. And what happened when they killed the snake, the blood poured over the lake, made it go pink. And then, of course, then that night, the people seen the red sky reflection in up there, and then they knew tomorrow was going to be okay now because the Noran is dead.
Just as the view of the sky could be uplifting to Doc's people thousands of years ago, today it's the view from the sky that others find awe-inspiring.
The contrast of the really clear turquoise water, white sandy beach, and then the nice bit of green shrubbery before the pink lake from an aerial perspective just looks spectacular.
Jamin Hudson is a remote vehicle operator who's one of the few people in the world to have flown a drone over the lake. When Jamin was 18 years old, he lost the use of his legs in a road vehicle accident. Wheelchair-bound, his trip to Hillier Lake is the first of its kind.
You know, I'm in a wheelchair. It's probably the least wheelchair accessible place in the world. But last year, I was very lucky to actually get onto the island and make it through all the bush tracks and get right up next to the lake. I remember when I first saw it, looking at it and just thinking, like, it really is pink. You see photos and videos. These days with so much Photoshop, you really don't know what to believe, you know? And I mean, of course I knew it was true, But until you see anything with your own two eyes, you don't realise quite how special it is. I know for sure I'm definitely the only person in a wheelchair that's ever been lucky enough to sit next to that lake. To sit next to it, I mean, it's something else, because you got the white salt crystals and then it basically just straight onto the pink lake. It's incredible.
Although pink lakes are not uncommon on the mainland area of Esperance that faces Middle Island, none of them are as persistently rosy in their complexion as Lake Hillier. The mystery of what causes Lake Hillier's intense color is one that had plagued scientists for decades.
Pink lakes are actually quite common in the region around Esperance. There are several of them, although none are as stable and as bright pink as Lake Hillier is. It's as unique in that sense.
We used to have a pink lake in Esperance here. It's still called Pink Lake, but unfortunately it's a very dull grey now. And I think the fact that it's had a lot of interaction with man and they mined the salt out of it for so long, the saline content has decreased and hence the colour is no longer there. I think that the island has had such little interaction with man is why it stayed so pristine and pink.
Could Lake Hillier's salt content explain this striking pink color? Jamin's observations could explain why the lake stands out from others. Lake Hillier, after all, is a salt lake. Salt lakes form when water flowing into a lake has no escape and so evaporates, leaving behind minerals in its place.
The lake itself is around 35% salt. That's 10 times saltier than seawater, which is only 3.5% salt. It's so salty that it starts to sting your skin, so it's not that pleasant. I dreamed of going for a swim in the lake. After it was stinging my skin, I decided against that. In fact, washed off in the ocean to get the salt off me, because the ocean is so less salty than the lake is.
Some scientists have speculated that a type of algae is the source of Lake Hillier's candy floss pink tone. But with such a high salt content, could even algae endure Lake Hillier's salinity?
People were thinking maybe it was a chemical in the lake, or people were thinking it was the algae in the lake that's producing this pigment color. They theorized it would be an algae because they were able to detect algae that did grow in these pink lakes. And the algae is a red color as well, so that kind of made sense. But no one had really proven that the algae was the cause of the color.
The cause of Lake Hillier's blushing pink complexion puzzled Ken and his colleagues, working for a global study called the Extreme Microbiome Project. The project's mission is to improve techniques for detecting and recording genetic characteristics of unusual communities of microbes. In particular, those found in extreme environments, like the red waterfalls in Antarctica, and even the International Space Station. Their analysis of Lake Hillier was the first in the world to prove the real reason behind the mysterious bubblegum pink water.
The reason why we wanted to do Lake Hillier is because it was such a weird-looking lake. This bright pink color had us all intrigued. What might it be that's causing that color to be present?
To establish what was causing the water's remarkable color, the research team took 45 different samples from Lake Hillier.
The really interesting thing about the water is it does stay pink. I've got a bottle of it in my lab office there that's still quite pink to this day. The organisms are very robust. They survive away from the lake.
Ken's team was the first in the world to take samples from the lake and establish there was indeed life in the lake. Its inhabitants are microscopic, so Ken's team used genetic profiling to identify the mix of organisms living there. And what made up the various life forms surprised them. Algae, it turned out, was not the main resident.
With our genetic tests, we found that 20% of all the DNA from the lake was from this one organism, Salina.
Salina is not an algae, but a red-colored bacterium, one that thrives in extreme conditions like those found in Lake Hillier.
So it really is the most populous organism in the lake, the most common bacteria in the lake. And because of that, its being pink is spread across the lake at quite a high concentration, and so the whole lake is pink.
The high quality of the red Selenobacter ruber explains the glorious pink complexion of Lake Hillier. Yet the consistency of Lake Hillier's hue is unusual.
Lake Hillier seems to be the only lake that's constantly pink and doesn't seasonally fluctuate. No other lake in the world that we are aware of has that stability.
Although this bacteria has been found in other salt lakes around the world, the variety found in Lake Hillier could be unique.
The main organism that we found, Selenobacter ruber, has been detected in other salt lakes around the world, and those are also pink. We might be looking at a unique Australian species of this organism, though, in Lake Hillier. There haven't been that many genetic studies done on other lakes to know that yet.
Selenobacter ruber uses its pink pigment much like plant uses chlorophyll. The pigment harvests light and converts it into energy. This unusual organism's survival depends on living in places with high salt concentrations.
It would die at a salt concentration of less than 15%, so it cannot live in ocean water because it's not salty enough. The organisms themselves have evolved to tolerate the high salt environments.
The extreme living conditions in Selenobacter ruber make it what is called an extremophile. Extremophiles can only flourish in extreme environments, which is what has piqued the interest of space explorers. Could it be that the otherworldly Lake Hillier can tell us something about the possibility of life on other planets?
Some of the extremophiles that we have been studying have been theorized to exist on other moons or planets. These are extreme environments also, and so if something is going to survive there, it's going to be a very robust and hardy organism like the extremophiles are.
To understand how these organisms cope under these extreme circumstances, some scientists have been growing organisms in conditions comparable to Mars and of Jupiter's moon Europa.
We have some idea what the conditions are, for example, on Europa. So some of those planets we know that there's water. So even Mars has evidence of some ice caps. And we're growing our terrestrial Earth organisms under those conditions. And they survive very well. So there's a whole new science of astrobiology because we know there's going to be similar creatures out there somewhere.
Who knows what else these briny pink waters may one day yield? For now, research continues into the origins and inhabitants of Middle Island. With the pink lake right in the center, a focal point in this intriguing mystery.
That's why it's so unique, I think. Coupled with the history of it all, if you made it up in a story, people wouldn't believe it, really, would they? You know, it's incredible.
Today, science can look to the seemingly impossible habitat of Lake Hillier to help us understand what could be living beyond our skies.
Aboriginal people are still there, looking at an ancient landscape that's been their home for many thousands of years.
Could this be the most serene rush hour on Earth? This is where icebergs assemble before gliding out to the coast. But this is no ordinary coast. The smooth, sandy beach is as black as a night sky. Twinkling on it like stars are shiny beachgoers made of ice. Glazed sculptures adorn this shore of Diamond Beach. Situated on the southeast coast of Iceland is a parade of icy figures, a sight that ranks as one of the rarest on the planet. Being here on a clear day is a privilege. Heavy cloud, sleet, rain, and snow often cover this area, reducing visibility and concealing the glistening gems and mountainous ranges that make this area so unique. The same forces that give rise to the almost impossible beauty of the scene before you also often keep its wondrous beauty shrouded in mystery. Here at the base of a glacier, this site is a relatively new feature. Less than a century ago, these elegant icebergs didn't exist.
You're seeing a snapshot of a time, of a place that is constantly changing. It was very different 10 years ago. 10 years before that, it was still much different. And it will be different 10 years from now. I would say that the most unique thing about the region around the glacial lagoon is when people realize the amount of environmental change that has happened there over the last 100 years. That where people are standing, you have this very large lake. This was all under ice 80, 90 years ago. There was no lake. It was just the coast, a torrential glacial river, and the glacier.
The abundance of icebergs today is a result of the changing landscape that is responding to the changing climate. The source of this evolving ice world is the glacier. This giant mass of compacted ice is on the move. It acts just like a river as it heads downhill, although one in extreme slow motion. About 500 years ago, Iceland entered a period of bitterly cold winters. It was a period some scientists call the Little Ice Age.
There has been glaciers in Iceland for thousands of years, but the Little Ice Age was a period started in medieval time, and here in Iceland was not really over until the late 19th century. The glaciers were advancing.
During this period, heavy winter snowfalls more than replenished the summer melt. But as the 19th century approached, the balance of snow to melt shifted, causing the glacier to reduce in size.
In 1890, there was a place where there were only 200 meters left for it to reach the sea. Then it started to retreat.
In its wake, the glacier has carved out a deep bed in the ground. A bed that would 50 years later become a lake.
But the lagoon started to form in the 1930s. And it has grown enormously since. When I first came there as a kid in 1970, it was much, much smaller, and you can see the big changes that happened. It's quite clear that this lake can get 3 times longer than it is today, because there is such a deep channel that the glacier is now flowing inside, and it's retreating very fast. And this is now the deepest lake in Iceland.
In 1991, researchers mapped the base of Iceland's largest glaciers, including this one.
This survey revealed a deep trench that goes some 20 kilometers inland. And that's where the lake has great potential of expanding as the glacier retreats.
Even now, it continues to grow, its expansion accelerated by the climate and location.
If you visit the glacial lagoon, Jökulsárlón as we call it, then I would say you should think about the change that you are witnessing.
Fed by the glacial melt and the influx of seawater from the nearby Atlantic Ocean, it's as if this grand glacier is bowing to the insatiable lake.
It's also a fact of, we have here a direct contact between the meltwater or the glacial lake itself and the ocean. So we have high tide and low tide here, meaning that warmer salt water, ocean water, flows into the lake, which warms up the lake, which increases the melting of the ice. So this lake is, over the last 2 decades, has doubled in size. So this is a very fast process which is occurring here.
Fortunately for us, as the glacier retreats from the coastline, it doesn't disappear entirely. Instead, it leaves behind a trail in its wake, a series of icebergs.
This is the front of the glacier, and this is the calving front of the glacier. There are many different processes forming at the snout of the glacier.
This snout becomes unstable owing to the forward momentum of the glacier. Where chunks of loosened ice break off, they plummet noisily into the water, where they can generate a small tidal wave.
It has been calculated that somewhere around 0.6 cubic kilometers of ice calves into the lake every year. It's a lot.
These naturally formed masterpieces continue to transform.
Calving icebergs and floating icebergs, they are very scenic. And of course, this is a phase which we are looking at. People can enjoy it. People are sailing on the lakes. People are kayaking on the lakes.
As the lake grows, it's creating a new habitat of its own, one that is attracting different types of marine life.
People have been doing some studies about the marine life, which seems to be growing here in this lake due to the direct contact with the coast. For example, we have seen a few small types of whales here, and then there are seals, as you might have noticed in the background, and some trouts and other fishes.
In the springtime, an increasing variety of birds are flocking here. But by the winter, it's the icebergs that gather in the lagoon. Come the summer, just as their parent glacier melts, so do these icebergs. They gather at the mouth of the narrow channel. Their only access from the lagoon to the coast. Massaged by the water encasing them and the summer sun above them, they continue to change shape. At last, they're small enough to be carried down the channel. For that to happen, they must wait for the tide to change. When the tide does change, it's as if the currents are gulping water out of the lake before breathing water back into it again.
You can see that the icebergs, they are drifting in when you have high tide and out when they are low tide. It's just the location. We are just a few hundred meters from the ocean.
Some icebergs begin their journey in the wider ocean, though most remain close to the shore. They bob up and down before waves push them back up onto the beach. Displayed along the beach, the icebergs continue to morph. the warmer seawater smoothing the icebergs into different shapes yet again. The effect is a myriad of resplendent forms. Churning, washing, tossing. The strong tide carries them out to sea. Those that stay are broken down and washed ashore. Their glistening shapes line the beach either side of the channel, enthralling locals and visitors alike at all times of the day. At this time of year, the sun only just dips to inspire keen photographers to brave the cold and capture the natural beauty. At the height of summer, this is one of the best spots in Iceland to enjoy the midnight sun. These stunning natural sculpted ice forms will eventually melt away. Even as they reach the climax of their life cycle, their ability to dazzle never dims. It's no wonder the sparkling diamond beach is considered a crown jewel of Iceland. Adding to the striking scene is the black sand that blankets the shoreline. The unusual terrain is a result of the interplay between glaciers and volcanic rocks left behind from past eruptions. Glaciers are among the natural world's most effective excavators, carving out valleys and pushing downhill vast quantities of soil and sand that were once volcanic rock.
In the last million years, glaciers have very frequently covered large parts of Iceland. The south coast of Iceland, there is hardly any harbors, there's just the sand. They are the way they are because there is so much loose material that is carried by the glaciers and the glacier rivers to the coast. And most of this loose material is volcanic ash and volcanic rocks that are sort of easily fragmented, and they form the whole south coast of Iceland.
While this site is unique to Iceland, it is not the only place in the world where ice flakes create breathtaking images across the shore. For the residents at Davis Station at East Antarctica, their front doorstep is a constantly evolving landscape. In a similar process, these icebergs in the Southern Ocean are nudged along into the bay. Many of these calve off from the nearby Sorsdal Glacier, flowing with the natural currents and the wind in and around the shore. Some of the bergs break up, washing ashore as glistening gems, peacefully clinking on the beach. In Antarctica, you get magic hours. Summer at Davis Station means 24 hours of daylight. If you were up at 1 in the morning, these serene spectacles are up with you, captured at the right time of the day, and with the help of a vivid pink sky, the results are awe-inspiring. Unlike a real gem, the scenes at Antarctica and at Diamond Beach are not everlasting, and nor are the events that produce this extraordinary sight. As unimaginable as it seems, experts are projecting an Iceland without glaciers. A projection that includes the glacier responsible for these majestic icebergs.
We are seeing a very large change in just the shape of the land and the landscape because the glaciers are disappearing very fast. Well, they're not, perhaps too early to say that they're disappearing, but all the evidence suggests that a very large part of the glaciers will be gone in 100 years, and in 200 years all the glaciers will be gone in Iceland.
While glaciers create a dramatic imprint on the landscape, what would be the impact of their disappearance?
And that would mean, for example, Glacier Laguna on the southeast coast. We would have this very large lake that would extend all the way to the mountains that are now people can see in the background. And the glacier would be gone.
The naturally crafted ice sculptures that glide through Glacier Lagoon and emerge on Diamond Beach are fleeting monuments to an ever-changing world. One where the landscape is less permanent than we may think.
It's a reminder how fragile our nature is and how we have to preserve it.
What is impossible is to foresee the natural phenomena that we will see next year or the year after. It's always full of surprises. Use your senses and think about it. This will be different when I come here next time.
Standing proud across the landscape is an army of mysterious rock towers. These captivating columns inspire many and mystify others. You have entered the impossible Shilin Stone Forest. Impossible because it shouldn't exist.
So the stone forest shouldn't be there. They should have been dissolved.
The Shilin Stone Forest is located in southern China. For centuries, the local Yi people have revered the area. According to local legend, one rock in particular is said to be the frozen figure of a beautiful Yi maiden who drowned in a flood. As the story goes, the rock of Ashima is believed to protect the Sani people and serves as a symbol of power to choose who you marry after she refused to wed a man she did not love. The scientific mystery behind the stone's forest formation only came to light in 1960 when Hungarian geographer Deans Bulaj completed a study of them. Yet even today, the impossibility of the stone forest continues to intrigue.
Nature can be even sometimes more fascinating than those legends.
Dr. Fred Jordan is a geochronologist. As someone who studies the age of rocks, he's among those who are intrigued by the very existence of the stone forest. Although many generations of rock columns live here, at first sight their existence is against the odds.
The youngest column is 800,000 and the oldest is 3 million, something like that. The rocks, they are way too old.
The presence of these fortress-like formations is surprising, owing to the vulnerable materials they're made of. Minerals that, anywhere else, should have dissolved away by now.
When you unravel the complete history, it's like, oh yeah, that makes sense. But at first, people are like, it shouldn't be there.
The complete history of the stone forest begins 270 million years ago, when what we see today looked very different. Because this was a world that started underwater.
Right before 270 or 280 million years ago, there was all shallow sea. So there was, in shallow sea, it's very simple ecosystem. You got coral, because you got light that go through.
The coral, along with tiny crustaceans it attracted, shared a common ingredient that would define the landscape we see today. That ingredient was calcium carbonate.
A lot of organisms that use calcium carbonate to produce their skeleton or their shell. And when they die, they just fall at the bottom of the ocean.
The tiny pieces of coral and shell accumulated on the sandy seabed. Over hundreds of thousands of years, they gradually transformed into a thick layer of limestone rock. There, at the bottom of the sea, they might have remained entombed in their new form, if not for a series of extraordinary episodes. The first was on a tectonic scale. When two plates slid over each other, they progressively hoisted up a large swath of seabed out of the water, leaving it exposed to the air, wind, sun, and rain.
You have limestone and you percolate water through it. So if you just use normal water, nothing's gonna happen so much. But if you use slightly acidic water, then you're gonna start to dissolve the rock.
Rainwater, being naturally slightly acidic, was the first sculptor of these regal rock columns. But over millions of years, its corrosive carvings would have worn away these rocks by now. How then can they still be standing?
The oldest column is 3-4 million years, but it's just too old to have been preserved all that time. So there must be something in between that happened.
That something in between happened 10 million years later, and it took the form of a massive volcanic event. Multiple volcanoes released a flood of molten rock that covered hundreds of square kilometers, including this limestone bed.
Now the rock it covers sort of fried them, but everything below got protected by this armor, if you want, of basalt.
Basalt, the rock born out of volcanic eruptions, is more robust against rainwater than its limestone cousin. Its presence acted as a shield, slowing down the erosion of what would eventually become the stone forest. But that still doesn't explain the age of some of the older rock columns that stand today.
Why is it so old? Because it's been protected twice. One time by a basalt armor, the other time by a sediment armor.
This sediment armor was the gift of a lake that emerged about 40 million years ago, on top of the basalt and limestone layers. The lake emerged after tectonic plates began colliding into each other, causing an indentation in the landscape. Today, the signature of this lake can be seen in the silhouettes of the different layers of rock that remain.
Now, if you go in the stone forest, you can see something very interesting. You get shape where it's a fat piece of rock, and then it's slim, and then it's fat again, and then it's slim. And that is the different nature of the rock.
Over millions of years, the rain and wind continue to slowly fashion folds into the rock faces, working its way through the layers of sediment and basalt, eventually reaching the responsive limestone layer once more. As the rain pleated the rock into these magnificent walls, it carried minerals away with it. But where has all this runoff gone?
You get those nice pillars of stone, but below there's plenty of cracks, holes, caves. We don't see it.
As the water runoff filtered through the soil and into the caves, below ground, the limestone minerals were reborn to spectacular effect.
The consequence is when you go in caves, that's why you see stalagmite and stalactite.
For the people who live here, the stone forest is an inspiring vision, the rock of Ashima encapsulating an epic story, which is fitting. The presence of the stone forest today is both a marvel and something of a miracle, as though the Earth's natural forces have conspired to preserve these stunning towers for the world to enjoy.